For today's lesson, we're just continuing solving quadratics by completing the square. We're just going to extend the lesson by having irrational solutions, but the process doesn't change at all. So let's look at example 1. It's x squared plus 8x plus 9 equals 4. We need to get the x squared and the 8x by itself. So we are going to subtract 9 from both sides. We are going to bring everything else down. So x squared plus 8x, your blank, equals 4 minus 9 is -5. And then we need our blank. From here, we take our b term, divide it by 2, and square it. So we would have 8 divided by 2, square it. 8 divided by 2 is 4, and 4 squared is 16. So we're going to add 16 in both of these blanks. Then we know that this is our special case now since we completed the square. This 4 is going to be the term that is in the parentheses for my factor. So I would rewrite it as x plus 4 squared equals, and -5 plus 16 is 11. Okay, so now from here we're going to solve. We're going to take the square root of both sides. Square root. This leaves me with x plus 4 equals, the square root of 11 is not perfect, so we're just going to put plus or minus the square root of 11. Last step to get x by itself, we're going to subtract 4 from both sides, leaving us with x equals -4 plus or minus the square root of 11. Now, before I can say these are my solutions, I need to double check that 11 can't be simplified, or the square root of 11 can't be simplified. But if we look at 11, it's a prime number, and there is not a perfect square that can divide into 11. So this is my answer. You are more than welcome to leave it like that combined, or you can split it up into x equals -4 plus the square root of 11, and x equals -4 minus the square root of 11. Either way, you have both of your answers. Moving on to example 2, it's x squared minus 16x minus 4 equals 0. We are going to add 4 to both sides, bring everything else down. X squared minus 16x, your blank, equals 0 plus 4, which is 4, and your blank again. Take your b term, divide it by 2, and square. So we have -16 divided by 2 and square. -16 divided by 2 is -8, and -8 squared is +64. So we're going to put plus 64 here, plus 64 here. We know that this factors to be x minus 8. If it helps, use your b divided by 2 term to help you write that. So x minus 8 squared equals, and 4 plus 64 is 68. Let's solve it by square rooting both sides. We would be left with x minus 8 equals plus or minus the square root of 68. 68 is not a perfect square, so we're just going to leave it alone for right now. Then we are going to add 8 to both sides. When we do, we get x equals 8 plus or minus the square root of 68. So now we're going to look at 68 and see if there's a perfect square that divides into 68. So if you have your perfect square list, I would use it. Start at a reasonable number, maybe 16. 16 doesn't divide into 68, so then you go down to 9. No. 4. Yes. So if I look at 68, the square root of 68 becomes 4 times 17. Take the square root of both of them. The square root of 4 is 2, and we'd have the leftover 17. So when I rewrite my answer, I am going to replace the 2 square root 17 where the square root of 68 is. So this would give us the answer of x equals 8 plus or minus 2 radical 17. Again, if you want to, you could split it up and get x equals 8 plus 2 times the square root of 17, or x equals 8 minus 2 times radical 17. Either way is fine. Example 3 is x squared minus 10x minus 55 equals 0. I challenge you guys to go ahead and pause it and complete this example by yourself. Then you can use the video to help check to see if you have the whole process correct or a couple of the steps right. This will help you see how well you are understanding the concept. On this, get the x squared and the x term by itself. So we're going to add 55 to both sides. This leaves me with x squared minus 10x with your blank equals 0 plus 55 is 55, and your blank again. Take our b, divide it by 2 and square it. So negative 10 divided by 2 square equals negative 5 squared, and negative 5 squared is 25. So we're going to add 25 to both blanks. Break this special case down. It is a negative in the middle, or we could see that our b divided by 2 is negative 5. So we would get x minus 5 squared, showing you that that negative 5 can be shown from over there, equals 55 plus 25, which is 80. Solve it by taking the square root of both sides, leaving you with x minus 5 equals plus or minus the square root of 80. Get x by itself, so we would add 5 to both sides. X equals 5 plus or minus the square root of 80. We need to see if the square root of 80 simplifies. The highest perfect square that divides into 80 would be 16. 16 times 5 is 80. Take the square root of both of them. The square root of 16 is 4. Bring down the leftover square root of 5 because you can't do anything with it. So again, I'm replacing the square root of 80 with what it simplifies to, a 4 radical 5. So my answer to this quadratic would be x equals 5 plus or minus 4 times the square root of 5. If you want to, split it up I'm going to leave it as one whole answer. Last example for today, x squared minus 2x minus 44 equals 5. Going to add 44 to both sides. Bring down x squared minus 2x, your blank, equals 49, and your blank. Our b is negative 2, so we're going to take it and divide it by 2 and square, which equals negative 2 divided by 2 is negative 1 squared, and negative 1 squared is positive 1. So we're going to add 1 and add 1. Writing our special case, we could use the negative 1 to help us, or the negative in the middle. And we know it's x minus 1 squared equals, and 49 plus 1 is 50. We're going to take the square root of both sides. X minus 1 equals plus or minus the square root of 50. Add 1 to both sides. We get x equals 1 plus or minus the square root of 50. Check to see if it simplifies. 50 might be easy for some of you guys to recognize because it would be 25 and 2. Take the square root of both of them. The square root of 25 is 5. You can't simplify the square root of 2, so you bring it down. So I'm going to plug in the 5 radical 2 in place of the radical 50. Solutions, x equals 1 plus or minus 5 times the square root of 2. Again, you could stop here and this could be your solutions because you have both represented, or split it up to x equals 1 plus 5 square root of 2 and x equals 1 minus 5 times the square root of 2. Either way, you should be good to go. So hopefully you feel a lot more confident or comfortable with completing the square to be able to continue the practice for today. But that's all I got for you, so I hope you have an awesome one.